The A-League's January transfer window is closed. On the 10th of February, that is. Not that A-League clubs tend to care too much about that anyway. As long as the paperwork is done in time, plenty of deals tend to be announced after the deadline, and this year was no exception. The absence of a single Fabrizio Romano-esque figure clairvoyantly releasing every piece of transfer information online allows some deals to even still come completely as a surprise. Maybe the closed shop summer playing A-League is the purest form of football after all. We'll catch you up on all the deals from the final days of the window and assess every A-League team's business with a letter grade as we look toward the business end of the season. Meanwhile, Melbourne City have either lost, drawn or won their Champions League elite match against Ulsan in South Korea. As of right now, it hasn't happened yet, but by the time we talk about it, it will have on this episode of the Round Ball Australia podcast. My name is Lachie Avil. Joining me tonight in part one of the show is Christian Montegan. Christian, hello to you. We tend to kind of do these little truncated segments when we have an ACL night. The 9 p.m. kickoffs are not too friendly. I think MacArthur's even later tomorrow night, like 11:15 or something. Yeah. Not easy to do a full podcast after one of those games.
Can't complain too much. Imagine if it was a 2 a.m., 3 a.m. kickoff. I mean, at least it's sort of a reasonable time. I just can't join for that sort of later slot. Matt Olsen, obviously join you a bit later to recap that. Hopefully a Melbourne City win because, yeah, they've picked up some pretty decent results in Asia. So let's hope they keep the ball rolling.
Yes, but of course, contrasted with the pretty poor form in the A-League over the last 6 to 8 weeks as well. So it's going to be fascinating to see what Melbourne City dish out tonight. I feel like that 9 p.m. game is also almost like an awkward one because it's just like early enough where we can justify still getting a recording in 11 o'clock. But if it was like that 11 or 12 game, like we're not recording after one of those kickoffs, are we? So it's just a little teaser for us.
Yep.
But we'll get to that a little bit later. The headline today is the transfer window. It closed on Tuesday, the 10th of February. But the A-League is so unique, Christian, in so many ways. We never tend to get all the deals announced before the deadlines. They tend to keep on trickling through a couple more after the deadline as well. That was held true this week for Sydney FC as well. So what we're going to do, I'll go through the specific transfers that have come in the last few days and we can talk about them individually. And then we're going to go one by one through every club and assess how they've gone. So the big news is Sydney FC, really. So the German attacker, Ahmet Arslan, 31-year-old, he's played his entire pro career in Germany, made just the one proper Bundesliga top-tier appearance for Hamburger, and has bounced between the second and fourth tiers of German football. So he's gone up and down a little bit, with his shining light being a golden boot in the third tier of German football in the 2022-23 season. And he's obviously paired, Christian, with Apostolos Stamatoulopoulos, who was confirmed actually on deadline day, which was pretty cool. That was probably the biggest kind of deadline day story that we had. On loan from Motherwell, with about a 500,000 Australian dollar buy option as well after the 6-month loan deal expires. So that's two potentially quite big signings for Sydney FC as they look to really kick on into fourth and fifth gear in the back end of this season.
Yeah, two very important signings, adds a wealth of experience as well, especially in that final third where hopefully they can maybe score a few more goals. I think they've got so far 22 goals this season after 15, 16 games. I think that's an okay output, but if you want to be, punishing teams, finishing them off, I think they've created a lot of chances this season, but in some games they just haven't been able to finish them off. A couple of examples top of my head, that game they lost to Newcastle Jets a few weeks back. There's been quite a few examples of that where they probably should have killed the game earlier than they should have. So I guess these couple of signings are there to, I guess, re-emphasize that point of, just killing off opposition, because I think that's probably one of only Sydney's real downfalls, right? Because the rest, I think they're playing some really good football. Compared to last season anyway, where they had to juggle multiple competitions and obviously they were struggling with depth a bit. I think bringing in a couple more players, just some fresh legs to really revamp the squad a bit, I think will only do them the world of good heading into finals, which obviously they'll make for sure, and to try and compete with the likes of Auckland and now even Newcastle Jets being in the mix. It's not a one-way street, so I think it was important for them to bolster their squad a bit, and they did just that.
100%. Yeah, it's a real contrast to where they were last year at this point in the season, where it was their defense and conceding opportunities in transition. They brought in some strong midfielders. They've reinforced their defense. It seems like Marcel Tisserand is just consistently playing on this injury and getting subbed off, sometimes at halftime, 60-minute, which is kind of odd, but they're getting through it. They have the best defensive record in the league. They conceded just 15 goals, which is the best of any club. And there's Auckland on 17 and no one else under 20. So they've definitely turned this around, and now they've brought in some attacking reinforcements. That kind of puts a little bit of doubt, you'd imagine, into Victor Campuzano and his position in the team. He's looked good at moments. He scored a couple of goals. And then I imagine, obviously these guys not having made an appearance yet, but Arslan, I'm kind of thinking in that Thiago Quintar role, who's obviously had very good games at moments, but you're not going to expect that consistency from such a young player over the course of a season. So even someone who's only been, proficiently good at the third tier of German football, that does feel like a little bit of a punt at some point, but it's a visa player. They had a visa slot available. They want to challenge for the title this season, and he's a good option. And then at the very least, his competition to Quintana can come in if he's had not so good of a game. And then you have Stammer as well, who was the Golden Boot winner in the A-League. Sorry. There was symmetry between these players. I got lost a little bit. And was the first leading goal scorer in the third tier of German football, and Stamatolopoulos a couple of years ago was the third leading goal scorer in the first tier of Australian football. They're the numbers that I had in my head.
That is
so
confusing.
There's a little bit of symmetry there. It is a bit confusing, but they're definitely the positions where they needed to strengthen. It's actually fascinating how it's like just the complete opposite to last season.
And obviously it's important as well because they can rotate a bit more, right? Because as I mentioned before, then they're only in this one competition, the A-League, right? So they don't have to bounce off Asia where they have to keep rotating, prioritize one competition over the other. Whereas Melbourne City, obviously in that sort of predicament, which we'll touch on a bit later, you had Joe Lolly on the bench against Auckland, just gone past. Like that just goes to show the depth that they've got, the options off the bench that they can turn to. That's only a good thing, right? If someone's not performing, to their high standards, then obviously changes will be made, and that obviously, delves into the rest of the squad to say, okay, it's a bit of a wake up call to say, I've got to be on my game 24/7 because I know the person behind me trying to compete for my spot is potentially going to overtake me, and then I have to work even harder. So it creates that healthy competition within the squad, and that's why I think Sydney are going to be so dangerous with these couple of signings. I think it's great.
100%. All right, the other couple of signings that have popped through in the last few days, Nicholas Duarte out of the Mariners is going to Heidelberg United in NPL Victoria on loan for the winter season, which is interesting because we had Sabit Ngor, who was originally at Heidelberg, then transferred to the Mariners, and then actually went back for a loan season as well, and was a part of their Australia Cup run and the terrific season they had last year. So it seems like there's a bit of a relationship now between those clubs, which is cool to see. Luca Tavia, also of NPL Victoria fame. I'm going to wrap him off. We've got the competition starting this weekend as well. Got to get the plugs in, but he's performed well in Victoria for a couple of years. He's got his professional opportunity at Perth Glory. And the Brisbane Roar as well have confirmed the signing of a visa centre-back, Marius Lode from Norway, on loan for the remainder of the season from BK Häcken in Sweden. He's got a fair bit of experience, over 400 matches across European competitions, the Roar are saying, including a major role in 3 domestic league titles with Norwegian giants Bodo Glimt, which is obviously a big team. They beat Manchester City, beat Atletico Madrid in the Champions League in the last month or so to qualify for the knockouts. And we saw those rumours with Mark Natter as well. So obviously big club. So that's a fair bit of experience. And you have to say as well, there's obviously been a lot going on with the Brisbane Roar, but this downturn in form, you really can kind of put a pin in where Lucas Harrington left this team and say they need a little bit more quality at the back.
Yeah, for sure. And probably based on the profile, you think that this is going to be a defender who is going to give you everything in terms of fight, grit, organisation, because that's sort of dropped off a bit from a Brisbane Roar perspective, right? I think Valkanis has tried to look to the window to find alternative solutions, and obviously Marius Lloyd should happen to, hopefully fill that void and, regain that confidence within that defense, because once you go on a bit of a rut, a few games where you're not picking up points and not getting clean sheets as you used to, then that starts to become a trickle effect, right? It's like, where's the next clean sheet going to come from? So obviously Valkanis has looked at the situation and gone, I want a defender from overseas. I want someone experienced. And obviously Marius fits the bill well. So keen to see what he can do and how he can sort of help Brisbane get back to the form that we saw in those early days of the season. That's obviously what Valkanis is hoping for. And let's see how he sort of fits into the puzzle.
All right, there you go. They're all the deals that have come through in the last couple of days. So now we're going to go down the list of all the teams. I think we're going to, at the start of the season, Christian, we did kind of like pluses and minuses on the grades. I feel like that got a bit convoluted. So we're just going to strip it down, A, B, C, D, or F for the different teams. But we do have to discuss, are we considering like fees that clubs have brought in for players? Are we purely talking transfers in terms of trying to win the league this season? What is our kind of scope of reason here?
Good question. So I'm basing mine off, I'm not going to base it off transfer fees. I'm just going to base it off the player, the quality, whether they're good enough in terms of the ins and outs. And also on top of that, players who they've kept, who they haven't sold. I'm going to add that into my equation of my grading the transfer window, which I'll name a few examples as we go along. Yep.
Okay, sounds good. So purely with letter grade with the objective of having success this season.
Yep. That's my criteria.
All right, I like it. Adelaide United then, just the one in, no outs, Ajak Riak. He's been bouncing around some of the NPLs. Not a lot going on in Adelaide at the moment, but I think crucially they probably needed a bit going on. They have a visa slot that's opened up from Julian Kvitel. They haven't used it, and they desperately need more depth in defence as well, and they haven't acquired that either.
Yeah, so if I'm going to go for a grade here, I'm going to go for a C because, as you rightly pointed out, they just need way more, in terms of depth, in terms of just all-around quality, because where they're sitting at the table at the moment, if they want to try and push for finals, they need to bolster their squad, and they haven't quite done that with only just the sole signing. So although they did keep Craig Goodwin, there were obviously a couple of rumours. I think he was supposed to go to Indonesia. There were a couple of rumours, and I think Craig Goodwin shut them down on social media, saying, don't believe everything what people write, something along those lines. So I think that's a plus for them to keep him, because if he left, then I think it would have been way worse. I think this transfer window, on top of only signing the one player who, Riak, yes, he's young, 25 years old, or not young, sort of in that age where he can make an impact, but in terms of ambition long term, I don't know, is it the right fit? I'm not too sure. Like as you said, he's been bouncing around a couple of different clubs, but I think Adelaide just need a bit of stability, and this transfer window obviously, it didn't tick that box, so that's why I'm going for a C.
I think he's got injured as well, which doesn't help. I'd even go one further down and say a D, just because like there are other clubs in this list that haven't done a lot of business, but I think more than most Adelaide needed to in a very specific area that they haven't covered. Yep. So yep. I would maybe pull one down just to allow for some room for some low activity C's in there as well.
I like that. Yeah, I try not to be too harsh. I'm like, do they warrant a D? Do they warrant an F? It's like, where do I draw the line? But I'll give you that. I'll give a D.
All right. Well, an exact example of what I'm talking about is Auckland FC, right? They've brought in Jimmy Hilton from the Marconi Stallions, who had that Australian Championship campaign. I think it was maybe the quarterfinals, maybe it was, where there was that long penalty shootout against Apia, and then he stood up and took the winner and scored the winning penalty as well. So he got some fame. He's moved over. Obviously, the injury to Ollie Saylor is what's prompted that. But Auckland's are one of these teams that don't really need first team signings. They are ticking over as they are. Yes, they've had a few injuries here and there, but they've been covered reasonably well. So I think Auckland is a team where they need to see. They do a lot of their business in the kind of main transfer window. So kind of just right on par for them for me.
Yeah, I was going to say C as well, spot on, because they're a team who just doesn't need to add, too much. So, they've already got the squad settled. I think it would be the opposite if they brought in like 4 or 5 players in January. It'd be like, okay, alarm bells ringing. Like you don't really need to bring in that many players because it's all sort of working under Corica at the moment, sort of flowing from what we saw last season. Obviously with Ollie Sale, that signing had to be made, which is a no-brainer. But besides that, yes, maybe they could have added 1 or 2 players, maybe for injury backups, emergencies. But besides that, in terms of the actual squad on paper that they've got now, I think a C is very good for them. I think they can't really get a B or an A because, like I said before, I just don't think they need it.
100%. Yeah, that was their ceiling. All right, C for Auckland FC, Brisbane Roar, 2 wins. We just talked about him, Marius Lode from Hacken in defence, and Nick D'Agostino, which is a big coup, getting him back into the A-League as well. Obviously, one of these Australian players looking to score some goals, looking to get on the plane to the World Cup as well. And obviously, the big out is Lucas Harrington. That was a deal that was arranged a while ago, but they've lost him in this specific window, so we are going to count him. What's your first impression of Brisbane?
Tough one. I'm torn between a C and a B because D'Agostino I'm really high on. I think he'll be a really good signing, given he obviously got a call up from Popovic, I think a window or two ago, got his opportunity there. A lot of experience in the A-League. I think one of Brisbane's problems this season, or at least of late, is being able to score goals, right? I think that's probably been the problem throughout most of the season, right? They've just had to scrap and find that goal, whether it be late on or on the counter-attack. I think D'Agostino can provide that bit of assurance that if you give him the service, then you will score goals. And I think if Brisbane, can sort of create a bit more for him, then I think this will be a fantastic signing. So that's why I'm sort of torn between a B and a C, because Lucas Harrington is obviously a big out for them as well. So if they kept him for another 6 months, I think guaranteed B, but I'm sort of torn. If there was a C plus, I'd give it, but we're not giving pluses. So I don't know.
I'm with you on a B. I'm with you on a B, I think.
All right. I was going to lean towards a C, but we'll do B. It's close. It's close.
It is close. Obviously, Lucas Harrington is like a massive blow to lose. But getting in Marius kind of just mean like they have replaced that in some way.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, we won't know, just how good he is just yet. But Lode, I reckon, holds them at a C just for replacing that position. And then D'Agostino on top. You're exactly right. The only team that scored less goals than them are the Wanderers, right? So they need to find more ways to score goals. They brought in D'Agostino, and he's already scored a goal for them. So yeah, I think by that logic, I'm happy dragging him up to a B.
Yeah, I think Marius sort of puts him on that level to a B. So yeah, I like those two signings. I think they'll do really well. Hopefully for Valkanis' sake, because the results are sort of trending downward. They need to pick up some wins ASAP.
All right. Now, this is the by far the busiest team of the window, the Central Coast Mariners. They have a long list of ins and they have a long list of outs for very different reasons. So the outs, first of all, Abdul Faisal, Adam Pavlovich, Alexi Harides, James Harides, and then Mikhail Docker, who came back on loan from whatever club he was at, Verenfurt Kofu, and now he's gone out to a different team again. So that's not really an out, but it kind of is. And then Nico Duarte to Heidelberg, which is very much a developmental thing. And then the ins, we have the big influx from Sydney Olympic. So Ali Orgler, Chris Donnell, and Seth Clark. And then you've got Ollie Laval, who came from South Melbourne after his stints there from Western United in that kind of little break. They got Nathaniel Blair from Perth Glory and Kato Taniguchi, that transfer from the J1 leagues, Albirex Nagata, that did end up coming true. So he's come through as another visa spot as well. How do you even begin to try and break this one down?
Do you give him an A just based off the amount of transfer activity? It's like
quantity.
How do you break this down between quantity and quality? I mean, they've brought in obviously quite a few players, from NPL level. I mean, have they brought in the right profile of players? That's my question. Some of these players, admittedly, I haven't watched too much of at NPL level, coming from some of these clubs. So obviously, it's a step up, right, from that level to the A-League. Can they, settle in quickly? Can they adapt? Some people might say, the level isn't, too far between A-League and NPL, but it's still a big jump. So I think some of these players sort of have to lift early, considering the Mariners' position at the moment. Yeah, as you mentioned, Mikhail Docker would have been a big loss, but obviously he didn't even play all season, so that doesn't really count. Adam Pavlicic as well leaving. So in terms of a grade, it's a tough one. What would you go with? You go first this time.
I reckon a B. I don't
You're
think you
going to be.
can give it an A just because like there's no big standout signings
That was my
that were like
thought.
massive coups or anything. But
Mhm.
yeah, but like you look at the likes of an Ali Orgler and Ollie Laval, like they're two players that have come in and made immediate impacts, right? Like Ali Orgler's scoring bangers, Ollie Laval's scored a few goals actually. Like they've actually, that 1-0 win against the Victory, they've actually won them games of football already. So I think you got to bump them up from a C, and then they haven't lost anyone big. Like Mikael Docker is the biggest name on that list, but he wasn't there anyway. He was on loan to a different club. So if he was playing and they lost him, that would have been big. But they haven't lost anyone massive. So I think a B is kind of where we're sitting because they had to just improve the depth of their squad.
They had just to sign anyone, basically, and they would have got him a pass. So, yeah, I'm with you. Let's go for a B. I won't disagree with it.
All right. MacArthur FC, obviously the big signing is Mitchell Duke from Makita Zelvia. He was hot property as well, coming from Japan, and there were a lot of A-League clubs that were reportedly interested in him. He wanted a place to play a proper season of football. Obviously, Japan are doing this summer to winter thing, and they've got this little mini tournament in the middle, but having league football week in, week out in the lead up to the World Cup was a big thing for him. So they've got him, and then they've also signed Pratazina as well from Sydney United, I think it was, to the end of the 27-28 season. So an NPL step up. So this feels like another bit of low business, but Mitchell Duke is like a key marquee signing. So I'm almost kind of thinking about that B mark again.
Um, yeah, I wouldn't disagree with a B. I would have liked to see a couple more players just because of, being in competition in Asia. I don't know, depth-wise, I'm concerned a bit towards the back end of the season when the games will pile up again. Do they have the squad to be able to compete in both competitions? Are they going to have to be like a Sydney last year? We've got to prioritise one over the other. That's my only concern. But I think Mitch Duke obviously raises that bar to at least the B. So I'm with you there because, again, it's sort of a similar situation to D'Agostino with Brisbane Roar, right? I think MacArthur's problem, and we spoke about this before the season, right? I had MacArthur to actually win the league in first, but admittedly I said that one of their downfalls would be that lack of profile in that number 9 position in the centre forward role. So I think Duke, and so far early days, he's proven to be a pretty good signing already, and we obviously come to expect that, right, with the amount of games he's played for the Socceroos, his work ethic, both on and off the ball, obviously his time in Japan, but obviously he's trying to look ahead for the World Cup, right? He wants minutes under his belt to get onto the plane. I think it's obviously, like I said before, it's a very good signing for MacArthur. So yeah, I'll go for a B, but it could easily be a C as well because I still think MacArthur, with a couple of extra additions, in 4th place at the moment in the league, I think that would have done them a world of good. But yeah, B or C, I don't know. B.
That's fair. I'm happy with the B. I think Mitchell Duke is just like that much of a marquee signing where it's fair.
Yeah, he makes a difference.
In all honesty, like Harry Sawyer's, yeah, he does. And Harry Sawyer's been doing a decent job. Like he has been scoring goals as well. So as they get into the thick of this part of the season where, you get to the last kind of month of the A-League, maybe you're in a quarterfinal or a semi-final double leg of the ACL2 as well. You got a lot of big games where you can't afford to just send out the second team. So having that depth in striker, you still got some decent depth pieces through the midfield and defence as well that can step in at different moments. So a few extra would have been nice, and I agree that keeps them back from an A. But crucially, compared to last season as well, they haven't lost 3 or 4 of their best players and
That's
completely
true.
tanked their chances of winning the league.
Good
so
point.
even in comparison, I think that gives them some points.
Yep, good point.
Now, this is one of the most interesting teams, I think, Melbourne City, because before the departure of Kai Truan was announced to New York City, this is an easy A. But I'm interested as to how much you think his departure downgrades that mark, because they brought in Ryan Teague from KV Mechelen on loan, very controversial signing. Daniel Arzani over from Hungary as well, a little bit less controversial. He was a City Academy boy. But Marcus Eunice and Harrison Delbridge as well. They are 4 elite signings, like actually elite signings for an A-League club. And to do them all in January is pretty impressive. And then to lose Kai Truin, though, is a big blow because he's one of their most valuable players. So to lose him in the heart of midfield, as well as one of their goalkeepers as well, who left it for an injury replacement contract that's now expired. Kai Truin is really the significant out there, and that really hurts them. And I think it's shown as well in the couple of games that they've played since he's left.
I still give them an A. With the ins that they've got, I know Truan's a big out. I still give him an A. I think it's those 4 signings. They are high quality. Even Delbridge, right? I mean, we go on about Ryan Teague and Daniel Azani, and obviously that's grabbed a lot of headlines because they've come from victory recently. But Harrison Delbridge used to play for Melbourne City, right? Let's not forget. I think his experience will be important. He's still only 33. Like, he can still offer a lot. Interested to see. Do you reckon he'll start? Will he slot straight into the team? Is he good enough?
Sorry, I've just kind of blanked on who you were talking about. Remind me.
Sorry, Delbridge.
Delbridge, yes. I would imagine. If he's got full fitness and he's there, then yes, I think.
Because, yeah, you got, like I said before, Teague and Azani. That firepower up top, I mean, that's enough to scare any defence, right? We saw it at victory. Ryan Teague, obviously that partnership with Valadon, we spoke about it time and time again, just sitting in front of the back four. I think Truin is a very versatile player, which is why I think it's a massive out, which you'd agree with, Lachie. He could play in front of the back four. He could probably play in the centre back position as well a couple of times if need be to fill in. When City back then, when they had those, emergencies in defence and midfield where they had so many injuries, I just think these 4 signings massively outweigh the Truin departure, and I think it's still an A. It's definitely still good enough for an A. So, yeah, that's where I'm leaning.
They are high quality. Truin is high quality as well. I actually did tweet out and post that before the Kai Truin departure was announced with those 4 ins, that it's probably the best January transfer window that an A-League club has ever had. And then Truin goes, and I'm fully on like the Daniel McBreen train of this is like one of the best players in the league. Like you mentioned, he was a DM that could play centre back. Like people forget now that he was a centre back that was kind of pushed into a DM role. Like that's how good he's been in that 6 for Melbourne City. I'll let you have. My heart is telling me to pull down to a B. I'll let you have the A because I don't think we're going to have a lot of A's in this kind of January window, but that's a big blow.
It is.
Oh, no, it has to be a B. It has to be a B.
It has to be now, does it? Oh, come on. Like you said, there's not going to be too many A's. We've got to give 1 A. We have to give 1 A.
There is one. I still think there is 1 A coming later.
Okay. We'll see. We'll see if we agree.
Okay. All right. We'll leave it in an A. Melbourne victory, 1 in, 1 out. Charles Nduka from Kagashima United, obviously the big Jamestown analytics signing, definitely get to line up the league so far. And out is Luka Kolic, one of the younger scholarship players as well. I don't know, Christian, the whole Nduka signing screams to me as just a terrible overreaction to the start of Virgos's season. Like, yes, obviously Victory have struggled to put away goals, but Virgos is like not the central problem. I said it before he started scoring goals. He's a good enough striker. I said it after he started scoring goals. He's a good enough striker. Even now that they've signed Nduka, Virgos is a good enough striker. I really don't think they needed this guy at all. I think they just should have held firm with Virgos. Like, I don't understand why they needed to make this signing.
Does it not provide healthy competition though? Because I was quite impressed by him, especially in that game against Wellington. I thought his hold-up play was very good. Aside from the assist that he got, I think, for the second one for Valu play, I thought just his general all-round play, I thought was quite positive. I think he can provide a different outlet for Victory moving forward. I'm not dismissing Virgos because I still think he's a fantastic striker and can definitely offer a lot for this Victory side. And we've seen he can be efficient in front of goal when he gets given the right service. Obviously, Juan Mata behind him, but I don't really have a problem with Nduka. I think it's a good signing. Initially, I was against it because I'm not really for the analytics and the data side of things to sign players. I don't generally agree with that, but since watching him play a bit, I can kind of see why they've actually signed him in a weird sense. So I'm not against it. I'm not totally against the signing. It's just Victory a weird one because it's like, who do you find to add to the squad? Like, who would you have, if you're part of the Victory board or the transfer team, what positions would you have looked for?
Yeah, no idea. I would have gone after Delbridge if he was available, because I think the centre back stocks need improving. But like apart from that, Victory have the quality in individuals. It's just about putting it together. Look,
That's
I
the
don't
thing.
think with one in, one out, I don't think we're putting them anywhere but a C, right? Like Nduka hasn't lit it up. You can't get a big boost from that. But they have the pieces.
That's the thing, right? It's like, who do you who do you put out? Who do you put in? It's like they've actually got a good squad on paper. It's sort of, yeah, one of those in betweens where they're not top of the table, so they're sort of in the mid pack. It's like they should be doing better. They should be signing more players, but they've actually got a good squad within. So yeah, I think it's just give them more time, give it to the rest of the season. And to be honest, I don't think they actually needed too much activity. They're one of those clubs like an Auckland, like a Sydney. Yeah, I just think they're on that same page. So C.
All right, let's keep moving. Then yeah, C, 100%. Let's move on to the Newcastle Jets. Same, just one in, one out. Alexander Sushinya has been released, and Zach Clough brought back in from Malaysia. Now, we know the rumour was with Adelaide United. At that point in time, they hadn't got rid of Kravaitas, so all their visa spots were full up. But Jets are another one in that kind of elk of the Victory, where like, who are you replacing in that team? James Delinov has really come good after maybe a shaky month and a half to start the season or something like that. Defense has been solid. Mark Natter's in career form. Shaughnessy was a really good import. Max Burgess in midfield and attacking midfield has been great. Their strikers have been lining it up in the attacking third. Like Zach Clough is just a quality player that knows the league that you're bringing in. So even for a team like Newcastle, where they probably don't need too much, I think that's immediately a B grade.
And it's like, where do you fit Zach Clough, right? I mean, you've got so much quality already up front there for Newcastle, like Lachie Rose, Clayton Taylor, Eli Adams. Like these are all players that have proven this season that Milligan can rely upon those players to do the job for him. So to add in Clough as well, we know his capabilities, what he did previously at Adelaide. It's just sort of the cherry on top, really. They're on top of the league. That again, they didn't really have to do too much. Like some of these other clubs we've mentioned, they're trending well. They're on the right path. So I think another C, but for them, a C is an A, if that makes sense. So yeah, the ceiling is that right. Sort of a certain bar.
You're right. Yeah, I mean he's going to be a depth piece. Yeah, maybe no, he's still a good player, but they don't need anyone, right? I think you're right. I think C is fair. Let's go with the C. I think your assessment is correct. A C is an A. They've just got another good player to boost a squad that's just won 6 in a row for the first time in their history, so they can't go too wrong. Perth Glory. I think this is an interesting one because Perth Glory, I think, are the one team in here that we can give actually a lot of credit for their exits as well, because their squad is so bloated. They had to get rid of some players. I think that was actually a detriment to them, how many players they had in their senior team. So Koa No has gone to Kong. That's incorrect. The list says Kong and Hanoi on loan. It's actually not, because that's Stephen Mork's team. I think it's the other Hanoi team that he's gone to on loan, but the name escapes me at the moment. Nathaniel Blair was released. He obviously went, oh God, which was the club at the top where he went to? Nathaniel Blair. Mariners, that's right. He's gone up to the Mariners. And then you've got Christian Patella from the academy who went to QPR, Adam Bergeria who's gone to Marconi Stallions on loan as well. So they've trimmed some of the fat off that team, and they've brought in Stefan Kolakowski, who's an A-League proven player who's back in the league now, and Luca Tavia, an NPL quality player that they've brought up as well. So honestly, could be back-to-back 3 squads that like probably don't need a lot of improvement, but they have trimmed the fat. They've brought in Kolakowski, who is a proven first-team footballer. Will you let me have a B for Perth Glory?
Yeah, I was going to go B as well, because I think getting rid of some of that dead wood, with all due respect, I think it's also looking forward to the future as well. How do we build, a sustainable team where you don't have too much players on your roster? I think that's sort of hampered them a bit. So yeah, and again, Kolakowski is one of those players who adds that bit extra, right? It definitely elevates to a B, 100%. You saw what he did even against MacArthur, scoring that equaliser. He's got so much quality as well. Probably one of those underrated players where, here or there, he hasn't probably got the minutes he deserves. But hopefully at Perth, he can settle and, try and get back to some of his best form that he showcased previously in the A-League. So I think, all in all, I think a B is a fair assessment.
All right, 3 more clubs. Sydney FC, we talked about They're two signings for the window. They haven't lost anyone, which I think could have happened potentially. So they've done well to hold on to the squad that they do have, and they've brought in Apostolos Stamatolopoulos and Ahmet Arslan as well. Two play. I mean, we talked about them off the top. We don't have to go into detail there. How do you assess them as a grade?
Would you go as far to give him a B as well? Just with
Yep.
You would? Yeah, I think that's fair.
Yep. I think that's fair. Yep. Okay, moving on. I think that's solid. Like, they brought in two solid players who should help their depth, and definitely Stamatolopoulos at a first team level as well. So that's better than average. I think a B is fair. Wellington Phoenix, an important window for them. Three pretty solid signings after what we are pretty sure we described in September was a bit of an underwhelming off-season transfer window for them. So they've brought in Bill Tuiloma from Charlotte FC, obviously a Kiwi. He's playing at centre-back now. Sander Kartum on loan from Hearts as well, who made his first start against the Victory due to the absence of Alex Rufus. So I wouldn't imagine that he's going to play too much, but will definitely come off the bench and make an impact. And then Sarpreet Singh as well, the marquee player, cut his teeth at Wellington Phoenix. He wanted to come back home to where he was loved because, to quote him, that's where he says he plays his best football. So that's really, really exciting as well. Definitely a B for me. I don't know. Sarpreet Singh was one of the best young players in the league at his time. Could you stretch it to an A? But maybe he's the only kind of marquee signing there. I'm not sure.
I want to go to a limb and say an A just because of Sarpreet Singh.
Just because of Singh.
He's so quality. I love him. I love watching him play. I remember in the early days in the A-League where he sort of lit it up and everyone was talking about him being the next big thing, the next sort of the Kiwi Messi, as they sort of called Marco Rojas as well when he was coming up. So, yeah, I think it's exciting to have him back in the league. It offers something a bit different up front for Italiano, who obviously a coach who likes to be creative and have those types of players in his system. I think realistically it's a B, but I just want to be fun and say it's an A.
We've got to be realistic. We've got to bring him to a B. We're serious here. We've got a serious grade.
All right.
We have a B. He's a great player. He's going to be fun to watch for sure. But that leaves us to the final team, the Western Sydney Wanderers. And I'm going out. I think this one is an A. I think that, look, on paper, Western Sydney already have one of the best squads of individual players on paper. They've got nowhere near the most out of them that they can, but they've brought in Hiroshi Ibasuki, a proven A-League striker, Ryan Fraser, a Premier League winger who's already made himself a cult hero, scoring 2 goals in the important games that he has, and Jacob Farrell, a proven A-League left back. That is 3 elite players that they brought into the squad for no... Alex Bonity going to the Portland Timbers, that's a relatively significant transfer, but like it feels like he's more replaceable than some of the other big marquee, like not a Ryan Teague, a Kai Truan, for example. And then they've released Gabriel Clerc and Mohamed Altay as well. So that feels like a really, really solid window for me.
Yeah, I think they've sort of hit the right spots in the right areas in terms of the signings that they've made, right? Ibuzuki, you know his quality in front of goal, right? When he has the ball in around the box, he'll finish off his chances. I think it's definitely what the Wanderers need. Being at the bottom of the table, they need goals, right? They need to be able to finish off, what they create. And he's obviously got that experience, in the league with, the sides he's played for, Adelaide, West United, and even Jacob Farrell, for instance, in the left back position, like you had in previous years. Like Jack Clisby didn't really, live up to expectation. I just think it's a really good transfer window, considering for a team who's, again, bottom of the league, they had to make some moves. I don't think you can give him too many faults, if not all. So, yeah, I'd agree and say it's an A.
All right, there we go. Western Sydney Wanderers with an A. So we've got them and City with A's, although I still feel contentious about City, but that's okay. I'll let you have it. No F's. I think that's fair. No failures in this window. Even just, if teams don't bring in everything they need, then at least not losing too many players holds them in that grade. But there you go. There are our grades for the January/February transfer window for the A-League men's teams. Let us know what you think as well. Christian, it's about that time. We're going to say goodbye to you. The Asian football is just about to kick off. So I'm going to sit back and watch Sydney City versus Ulsan. And then we're going to get Matt Olsen to talk a little bit of Asian football. Matt, welcome in. What have we just seen? Melbourne City, Marcus Eunice in the 93rd minute of the game. It looked like for so much of that game, the 1-0 was going to be the scoreline. Olsen come back in the 80th minute, score a goal. All of a sudden, we're looking at some of the other results that have happened in the last 24 hours, and Melbourne City would go into match day 8, still kind of on the cusp, not mathematically safe to progress to the knockouts. But then Marcus Eunice, 93rd minute, sews it up for Melbourne City. Not only secures Australia's first place in the ACL Elite knockouts, it's the first time an Australian team in any version of the top tier of the Asian Champions League in 6 years since Melbourne Victory did it have gone through to the knockouts. And they've locked up a top 5 place, which is crucial. We'll get to that a little bit later. But Melbourne Victory are going to the knockouts. Off the back of what the Central Coast Mariners did, expectations were so low from last season, and Aurelio Vidmar has come and absolutely knocked it out of the water. What a treat it is to see an Australian team perform so well and get some really, really nice results on the Asian stage.
I think immediately just want to pose the question to you. In terms of away victories in the history of this competition, was that the best?
That's tough because City themselves have had good ones this season. Honestly, in the moment, with my heart rate as high as it is, I'm struggling to pinpoint exact moments that I can point to.
There was a playoff against Kashmir Antlers where Andrew Naboo scored for Melbourne Victory. That was in 2017. And that, for me, has probably been one of the best. And respectfully, due to the age of the two of us, if you go back to sort of 07, 08, there's probably some good anecdotes in there for Adelaide as well, but I just don't. We just don't have the mental capacity to talk about it.
And maybe Wanderers away in the final, second leg as well.
Yeah, although it was technically a draw, but you are right, yes, that it was technically a victory. So, yeah, I mean, that's probably a pretty comfortable top 5 that we've just created right there. And this game we've just witnessed is firmly on that list. So, by all means, what an incredible night for Australian football. And what an incredible show of intent from this City team, where I think things have been a little bit sort of to and fro with their league form, but to know that greater conquest is in mind of, we've got this sort of, dual sort of responsibility going on, and they've really lived up to the billing, because to go away to South Korea and to play like that, it's just such a foreign experience to see something like that happen, and they were superb tonight.
It's exceptional. Okay, so short-term ramifications. Melbourne City, as we say, they're through to the knockouts. They have one more match to play next week back at Amy Park against another South Korean opposition. That match will still be important in terms of potentially climbing higher up the leaderboard, but crucially, they've locked in top 5, which means because the Japanese teams have done so well, they're currently sitting 1, 2, and 3. By sitting 5th, or 4th at the moment, but a lowest of 5th, it means that we will avoid the Japanese sides in the draw for the round of 16, because there's a direct 1v8, 2v7, etc., which means that Melbourne City will not have a possibility of going up in the round of 16 against a team that they lost to in the league phase. Like, this is, you are right in it. Your knockout stage game, look, maybe they won't be favourites, maybe they'll be slight unders, who knows, but you were right in it with a very, very good chance of making that top 8 in Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, and I mean, this is the thing, is that when we look at it on paper, we usually go into these campaigns thinking, here's where the sort of the minimum and maximum expectations are. And just by you talking about the nature of this, City have already really firmly exceeded it, because I think the expectation would have been you go to the knockouts, if you've made it from 6th or 7th or 8th. And we're not talking about that. We're not talking about the possibility of a Vissel Kobe coming in and, blowing them out of the water. It's just impeccable to be in this situation, right? I also think that what's really, really quite promising about this is looking further down the rest of a potential Asian bracket. A lot of these teams have just really struggled to get their form together across both competitions. It's almost as if collectively the whole continent, and I mean, look, we know obviously what's going on, with the CSL at the moment. We know that the K-League has had a pretty high-profile drop-off in quality. I mean, these leagues are, for whatever reason, going through a bit, and it's almost like they're the ones that are in our usual position of things are a bit of a mess right now, and They're struggling for the form and the consistency. How do they manage both competitions? And it just feels really, really good to be on the other side of that. Where, I mean, again, I don't know that City have the most stability at an A-League level, but that stability has really come through where it's mattered in Asia, and it's a really, really big testament to the current squad that's been assembled and the way that squad's been utilised by Vidmar. Because again, I feel the rotation, the mix of youth and senior players, it's just been phenomenal throughout the whole campaign.
It is. And Aurelio Vidmar, obviously, he had that run with Adelaide United to the final. Now what he's doing with Melbourne City, the reputation of being a specialist in Asia is there now. It feels like that is a concrete part of Aurelio Vidmar's identity. And I was talking with you and some other people on Twitter as well about the idea of how managers in general, but also Aurelio with this Melbourne City side, would go into games in the league with the mindset of the big thing we're doing this year is in the Champions League, and how that frames your approach to A-League games. Are you hamstringing yourself in a certain way to get certain ideas across to your players that are going to be more valuable in a Champions League format rather than the A-League? You're going to find that obviously Melbourne City in the league are going to play against a lot of low blocks and not really allow a lot of room in those dangerous areas. In the ACL Elite, teams aren't going to be as cautious. They're going to step up. They're going to have higher lines, which means not only is there more space in behinds, but the typical Melbourne City strategy of finding lots of overloads in midfield really comes into a successful kind of means in the Champions League Elite. Maybe that is overly generous as well. Maybe they've just not been good in the A-League. I'm not sure, but it's an interesting idea because it really does feel like we're getting a different version of this Melbourne City team in the Champions League compared to in the A-League.
Such a good point, because my mind goes back to the way that they manipulated the game against Zelvia, right? And so much of that was about the kind of wider sort of style of play that they were manipulating. And for whatever reason, it was working out for them, where when they were having their one or two chances, there was always that dangerous ball in the box and always that spare body that was always a bit of a threat. And I mean, Zelvia were pummeling them at certain stages of the game, having sort of 10, 15, 20 shots in the game. But City were able to use those sort of extra numbers going up front and played the counter-attack perfectly well, right? So I think to tactically have found that balance is a really, really special thing. But it comes with that long-term strategy. I think another thing as well is that the City Football Group, I think, would really be the ones in his ear as well, just to say that this is probably what we value far more than continued domestic dominance, especially when they've sort of gotten ahead of their own schedule by winning the championship last season, right? So no, I think it's a really inherently beautiful thing, and it just goes to show that Australian clubs and Australian football, I think we really do like to dog ourselves down a lot, and sometimes it's worth to just ponder on the one or two positives. If there's one thing to learn from what the past 4 or 5 years of being an Australian football fan has really taught us, is that, by the way, our place in the world is actually still pretty high. The standards we can set for ourselves, just by the nature of who we are as a sporting nation, that bar can be set really, really high, and today's a very, very good reminder of that. The whole campaign is. Let's just keep seeing how this City team can kick on.
Right, so that's short-term ramifications. Mid-term ramifications, fours of the coefficient. Coefficient check is really, really positive. We saw Kevin Muscat, Shanghai Port, had a 0-0 draw with Gangwon FC as well. They were already pretty much out. They are now mathematically eliminated, as well as Shanghai Shenhua. John Aloisi's Chengdu lost against Mark Jackson's Buriram United last night, which was a nice little kind of twist as well to A-League coaching alumni. They could still make it through to the top 8, but what we're looking at here is essentially China, who are the nation above us on the rankings. And we talked about this a lot last year. It's been a while, so I'm just trying to remind people. China are that direct competition for an extra qualification spot into the ACL Elite. And now that pretty much all of their teams eliminated, MacArthur helped us out in the ACL 2 as well with Beijing Guan. It means that Australia really have a pretty good run of getting coefficient points. And by my math and knowledge of the system, pretty much all we need, because Melbourne City are going to get some bonus points now for qualifying for the next phase. All we really need is MacArthur to progress through the round of 16 with Bangkok United, or maybe even one more Melbourne City win and we are going to overtake China, which is massive. It gives us another opportunity to send a team to this competition. And that's not even considering this whole Malaysian FA appeal to the Court of Arbitration for Sport, which is going to go down in a couple of weeks, which could give us another entry in the ACL2 as well. So it's just impressive at how much of a distance in terms of the coefficient we've managed to catch up this season. And it could give us even more opportunity in the next couple of seasons.
Yeah, I mean, again, it just goes back to what I was literally just saying a second ago, right? Like,
Yeah.
we ought to give ourselves some credit sometimes, because this has happened by design. Okay, getting the coefficient relegated to the point where we win the AFC Cup, was a thing that happened. But the way that we've actually established ourselves in the second tier, like, you come up against an Australian club in that competition, you're going to have a problem. Those teams are a lock-in to have a deep run, and it's a brilliant thing. And then on the Champions League front, like, we've basically just spelt that out as well. City have found a way to become a winning presence there as well. And it is fortunate in that I feel that, again, the other leagues are clearly having a bit of a moment right now. And the National Federation in Malaysia are certainly having a moment. So I don't know. I'm at the point where let's just really be swept up in the optimism of this, because really, again, going back to, that Mariners campaign, things just haven't really looked awful at any point, besides when obviously the Mariners entered the Champions League elite as the AFC Cup winners and were very much out of their depth. But that was very much just a case of that team had already rotated so much from when it already was a championship winning team, and it's a whole other conversation. But I don't know. I feel that there's actually a really, really good breeding ground here for continued and strengthened success in both competitions. You now sort of feed that energy back into how can both leagues live together in an ecosystem where Australian teams don't have to be so strapped with their resources, and how do they actually be able to find that special balance in both. And this is, like, if you're at the Jets right now, having won the Cup, start asking these questions, start exploring it. What will it actually take to have a sustained success between both? Because it is so unprecedented.
It is. And you've led me right into it. So the long-term consequences of this as well, I feel is really aimed not even specifically at the clubs themselves, because I feel like they are catching on, but in terms of the public opinion towards these competitions, I think this is massive. Just the understanding, and we've talked about this idea before, that, the Mariners would go into the AFC Cup and it's an embarrassment if they lost a game. Therefore, the stakes are low, and why should I watch? And if you go into the big leagues in the Champions League, the Champions League Elite, the Mariners last year, well, they've got no chance. Stakes are low. They might get one win, but they're never going to progress, and they're never going to challenge for a trophy. The idea that we can break those misconceptions and really turn it into a competition that is not just worth watching, but should have prestige. And, we should be able to turn on to Paramount Plus, and there should be a half an hour pre-show that we don't get. There should be a live studio at halftime talking about the match and some analysis afterwards. We don't get that at the moment. So hopefully what we can see from Melbourne City proving to the public that this competition is the real deal, and not just, a surface level of, okay, it's worth a lot more money, but can we use this to try and generate some prestige around the competition and kind of elevate its status in terms of the Australian football public?
Something else for me is that, like, when you look at the J League as a direct competitor, and certainly a competitor that's so far ahead of us, right? We're at the point where, I mean, I'm mindful of using this term because I feel its cultural significance has waned in recent years. But when we look at sort of that Euro snob kind of mentality, right? The archetype for these kinds of people, I feel that the J League is actually on their radar now in a way that it never used to be. Ever since Japan really put themselves on the map, and people now recognise Japan as a top 15 country in the world, one that can go on a knockout run at a World Cup, is easily the best team in Asia. The growth of the J League by an extension, and even the small things like the cultural impact of it, the accessibility of it on YouTube, the clothing items that the teams wear and things like this. The fact that just is something that's on the minds of people who are into football and into their sport, to know that there's a degree of separation between your local team and some of those players that are stars at a World Cup level, that is ginormous. And I feel that that is really something we've got to dip into, is really say, hey, by the way, like, this is like world famous brand Kawasaki Frontale that's on your doorstep. You know, this is the just a really, really special thing that we ought to encourage. And who knows how seriously, from a financial perspective, the clubs begin to take it, and the sponsorship opportunities. I distinctly remember when Glory were in the Champions League, the state government jumped onto it like that, because they were like, we've had all these strange things over the years, like trying to introduce the AFL into India and China and things like that. This is a competition where a team called Perth is literally flying to, well, obviously COVID got in the way, but they're flying to Shanghai to go play a game. And the government put the sponsorship on the shirt because they're like, this is huge. And yeah, it is. You know, like that is the potential it has in Australian culture and Australian sort of the sporting zeitgeist. So I think once we really just get into the culture of understanding how Australians engage more with Asia, you know, the sky's the limit for the competition. And I mean, come on, people like you and I have been saying this for 20 years. I mean, you know, it feels like we're on the verge of something special happening with it. But like everything, you need to give it time, and you need to give it a bit of growth. And I don't know if you want me to take this angle as early into the show as I'm about to, because we're about to talk about MacArthur and the ACL too. But we've got, you know, Joao Felix and Sadio Mane going to a Central Asian dictatorship to play a football game in about an hour, right? Like this is the gravity of what it is. It's global. It's a global headline making machine, and we have that degree of separation where if you live in the surrounding area in Newcastle, that's on your doorstep next year. Go out and see a game. It's a special thing.
It's remarkable, and if you know we were 1 year separated, and this was a year where the East held the final, there's like a legit chance that MacArthur get to the end and are hosting Cristiano Ronaldo at Campbelltown. Like that would have been a realistic possibility if we were in one of the years where the East hosts the final. Like, yeah. It is quite remarkable to speak about. And you've segued nicely, so let's talk about the Bulls. If you're listening to this on Thursday on release, they play tonight at 11:15, I think it is, Eastern Australian time, against Bangkok United in Thailand. It's the first leg of their round of 16 clash. I talked about the coefficient that's on the line, but again, I feel like as brutal as Sydney's loss last year was to Lion City Sailors, I feel like it's given people an appreciation of what the knockout stage of this competition should be. Yes, the group phase, you're going to get a few teams, which A-League teams really should be just winning, like purely should be just winning. But by the time you get to the knockouts, there are going to be Asian heavyweights, and they're going to be teams that are just genuinely going to be good knockout fixtures for A-League teams to deal with. And this is a prime example of that.
The expansion from the AFC Cup into the ACL2 obviously meant the Tier 1 nations, for lack of a better term, come into the fold, right? And obviously, you know, the result against Lion City really woke a lot of people up. But the biggest thing for me is that had the Valerie Germain situation not happened, we would have got a proper smack in the face, because Hiroshima would have run rings around that Sydney team, right? And so I think MacArthur, though, with the campaign that they've played, to be honest, they've gone up against a lot of hostility. I think coming up against a team like Kangon Hanoi is a perfect example of that, because just like the parochial nature of football in a country like Vietnam, it's a hostile place to go and play, and they've dealt with that challenge very, very well. Stepping up to the J-League level, though, we're seeing again in real time with Melbourne City that like that jump can be made. You can go away to Ulsan, you know, in South Korea and win a game. So, you know, if that's what's on the line here as they progress throughout the tournament, you know, that's great. But I think also, and this is where my particular AFC expertise is really going to come in handy here, because again, the average Australian would look at the Bangkok game on paper and think nothing of it. That is just a disastrous mistake. This team on paper are incredible. They have Tirasol Dangda, who is like personally, along with Chanatip from Thailand, genuinely two of my favourite players of all time. And the fact that he's made the leap from playing in Europe to now coming back to Thailand to play is a big deal. You know, I was recently asked, you know, by a foreign channel that I'm kind of friends with, to name like the top 30 current AFC players. And I was a little bit cheeky in that I wanted to make a bit of a quota system. So I've ended up introducing a few nations that really shouldn't have otherwise been there. But I settled on, when I was going through West Asia, I settled on Oman. And the name that came out to me first was Musan El Ghassani, because I distinctly remember this same Bangkok team, a better version that we're about to witness play MacArthur. But this same Bangkok team, when they went away to Sydney FC, was it last season or the season before? And they gave them a proper fright at Allianz, right? And the spearhead of that was Musan El Ghassani from Oman. So I think that, again, you write a team like this off and you've got problems. And that's exactly what Sydney did with Lion City. They thought, okay, we've got a free ride here almost in playing a Singaporean team. I'm sorry, that's not how it works. But that's where, again, I reflect on having to play a team like Kangan Hanoi. And that's a really, really good test for what a team like Bangkok United, by extension, are going to offer. Also, really appreciate that the away leg is first. I feel like whenever you're in this situation, having the home leg second is a really, really big up. And it will be for MacArthur. Because this is a team where they'll have enough parochial ties, then end up flying to Sydney and being there on match day in Campbelltown. I mean, we've seen that. Look at, was it Beijing Guan earlier this season brought like 200 or 300 people to Campbelltown. That's what these teams and their fan bases are capable of. So, again, you have to treat them with respect, yeah? We can talk about the fact that we're playing at a K-League level, we're playing at a J-League level. That's great. Respect teams from this part of the world. Respect them, because it is so stupid. The egg on our face if Bangkok come out and win this first leg 2-0 or 3-0. We've got to be very prepared for that. And first and foremost, it starts with an understanding. I mean, sorry to again interject in a bit of a different way here, but I think of mentally talking to a lot of Americans right now about going into that match day 2 game at the World Cup. And the one thing that Australians can do is they can really start to almost sniff their own farts in a way and really be brought up in the product of, we know that we're on an even enough level with a country like you. We can beat you. And it's like, well, it's actually not that simple. Australians are going to look at Group D on paper and become extremely arrogant, and they have no right to be arrogant. think the Peru game in 2018 as well. A lot of people went into it thinking, we just held our own against France and Denmark, we can beat Peru. And it's like, no, we went into that game with the stupidest mentality in the world. So respect your opponents, and that's what this first leg in particular will be all about.
Yeah, it's exceptional. And Thailand is third in the East in this coefficient ranking. They have history. A lot of these kind of Southeast Asian nations as well. If you took the average of the league, maybe it's not too exciting in terms of quality, but those top end teams have a lot of resources and a big network, and they have good international players. So you're going to see that a lot in these kind of ACL2 and even the low end of the ACL elite teams as well. So they're direct competition, and for the coefficient for the next 3 years, the Bulls got to get the job done. Absolutely. Just to finish off this chat about Asian football as well, we've seen the flurry of coaches go to China this off season, at least with connection to A-League football in Australia. We've got John Aloisi, Ross Aloisi, and Nick Montgomery as well. And I mentioned earlier the fact that Mark Jackson, obviously not Australian, but that A-League alum taking on John Aloisi in the Champions League. Like, it's so exciting to see Australia have more of an influence, not just on the competitions, but on the region as well. It feels like more and more we're becoming an active participant in what is happening in this part of the world.
There seems to me to be a real respect for, like, the knock-on effect of Ange Postecoglou breaking ground in the way that he did. Is people looked at it and thought that rugged Australian grit, the physicality and things like that we're known for, it makes a pretty bloody good coach. And I look at the fact that Iraq, the way that people are like making something of a saviour of Graham Arnold right now, on the verge of going to Monterrey to play an incredibly tough opponent from the Americas. This kind of thing is just ginormous. Like, people don't realise that. I think there actually is a bit of an Australian stereotype that's being made of not necessarily like a unique Australian style that we play with, but the character with which we play with. We're known for punching above our weight because we're mentally and physically strong. And from a coaching perspective, this is what I hope can be passed on, right? Especially in a country like China, where what's the one thing Chinese football needs? They need confidence, yeah? Confidence is going to breed the next Wu Lei. And it's disgusting that we've been talking about this massive, 50-year project that they launched with their millions of dollars. They still only ever produced Wu Lei. What an incredible footballer he is, by the way, in the way that he broke ground for the country. But they've not come close to anyone like that. No one capable of getting anywhere near a La Liga contract, right? And you look at the Nick Montgomerys on paper, the John Aloisi, someone like John Aloisi. I mean, come on, and all the background stuff they have. These people are proven winners, and they can breed excellence. I think we've got a really, really valuable couple of years coming ahead in the way that we're able to teach Asia a bit of a lesson like that, because we're going to make the Iraqs of the world stronger. We are going to single-handedly make a country like China very strong. And for all extensive purposes, Spain, Portugal, Morocco, 2030, I'm keeping an eye on them. Book them in for a World Cup. I think they're primed to really do something special. They're primed for a golden generation when people least expect it. And that starts now. And I want those Australian coaches and the CSL to really boom because of this.
100%. All right, Matt, thank you for your time. I really appreciate it. I know it's not too late for you, but it's late for me. So I'm going to go edit this podcast and then go to sleep. But it's always fun chatting with you about Asian football.
Yeah, no worries. Got really pinned up.
All right. Thank you all very much for listening at home. A long episode today, but appreciate your company as always. Just your 4 games of Australian football on the weekend in the A-League, but you still got the Bulls on Thursday night to keep you company. We'll see you on Monday for your A-League debrief. Take it easy. We'll see you then. Goodbye.